It's the end of the holiday season. We're wrapping up soon. I know you got some more gifts to buy. You got the last minute gifts. You got to buy like gift bags and wrapping paper and all that stuff and tape. You always run out the little pieces of tape. So I have a quick holiday story for you to wrap this up. I'm Kirk. This is still Dumb Test Late, the Story Creative Podcast. All right, let's get into it. Now time for some interactive fun. Okay, no time for jingle bells. Like I said, we're in a rush. It's the end of the holiday season. You got to get them last minute gifts. Christmas Eve is tomorrow. I said Christmas Eve is tomorrow. I'm still Kirk. This is still Dumb Test Late, the Story Creative Podcast, where I come up with stories. It's this holiday season. I'm doing holiday stories. I say stories because I only did one before. It's a pretty good one. Listen to that one about Santa's new little helper. Check it out. So this one is going to be called Used Christmas. So setting, of course, is going to be small town America, like every other Hallmark movie. I'm thinking this one is like short story at some point turned into a Hallmark movie, or maybe sci-fi because there's going to be a sci-fi element, but small town America. It's going to be like around now, Christmas Eve, maybe the day before Christmas Eve, which is today, the 23rd of December. People are rushing around to get their last minute gifts, and there's a person shopping. Of course, then they're in their small town. They're back home visiting family, their parents. They're in their small town. And they haven't been there before. They haven't been there in a while, I should say. They're coming back to their small town. They're not like a big banker in the city is going to find love in their small town. No, they're just back home in their small town that they haven't been in a while. But the commercialism and everything about this holiday season has gotten to them. So they're jaded, of course. Hold on. We have a dog. Sorry. My little tiny familiar dog wanted to hop on the podcast, and I just knocked over some lotion. Okay, so we're in the small town, holiday time, with our jaded character who's not into, or who's jaded about the commercialism of the holidays, but they're back in the small town they grew up in, but they need to find a few more gifts right before the Christmas rush. Or no, reverse that. They're in the Christmas rush. They need to find a few more gifts, which is making them even more jaded because everybody's out shopping. It's a mess. So they go to this one area. It's like, most people have this in their town, where it's like the antique district. There's like the antique mall or something like that. When I used to live in Maryland, there was an amazing one in Ellicott City. I miss it so much. I would go back to Maryland just to go visit there. But imagine it in your small town, historic district. So he's searching around there. He wants to be different and not just buy typical gifts, not just buy gift cards. He wants to find something unique for, the few gifts he needs to buy for his family. And he's walking through a couple shops. There's candy shops, there's all this, but the streets are really crowded, and he's being pushed around by the crowds and all that stuff. And he finds himself in this really old, dusty antique shop. Think of the movie Gremlins. Not that wild. Gremlins is a Christmas movie, by the way, but not that crazy and not that racist. Okay, but a old dusty antique shop like that he finds himself in, and he walks in, and one of the first things he sees is this CRT TV. Think of the old school tube CRT TVs, and it's playing like vintage toy and video game commercials from when he was little, the 80s and 90s, the way in the back past. And he's like hypnotized by this because it gives him that huge hit of nostalgia. Like when he was a kid, all these like holiday toy commercials are playing on this little TV, and he's hypnotized. He's instantly a little excited little kid again. All like the jadedness that he has as an adult is gone, and he's just standing there watching it. And he's like talking out. He's like, "Oh, I remember that toy. I used to want that. Oh, when this came out, like think of the Nintendo, think of like Sega Genesis, think of the early days like that, and like G.I. Joe toys and all that stuff. Stretch Armstrong and all those early toys, Cabbage Patch Dolls, and I guess before Furbies, but think about that era, like what would make you feel nostalgia, the toys and that stuff. You were seeing commercials for it on this little old school TV. And he's so happy, and he's like relaxed now. He's not jaded, and he's realized he's talking out loud in this little shop, which he feels like he's alone in. this old thrift store, vintage shop, and he's looking around the store and he see like the store he realizes a thrift store, a vintage shop, and it's just full of old toys and video games and clothes from like when he was young. He's like, wow, this store is amazing. I wish I would have got this stuff when I was little. He's like talking out loud and he realizes this little tiny old man that's like standing behind the counter smiling at him, listening to him talk, and he's like dressed in holiday clothes. He has like an ugly sweater on. He kind of looks like a tiny Santa but without the beard. And they start a conversation. He's like, oh yeah, I used to these commercials are bringing me back to my childhood and all these toys I begged Santa and my parents for, and or like his single parent. So he's like, oh, I asked for this. I wanted a Nintendo. I wanted a Sega. I wanted all these things, but I never got it. You know, my mom was working hard, but I understood. And he's like getting into all that and the disappointment of being a kid and not getting what you wanted on Christmas and writing to Santa and asking all that stuff, asking Santa for stuff and not getting it. And then I assume it's like the older man who runs a thrift store, vintage shop is like on one side of the counter, and our characters on the other side, and they're talking about, like the old stuff, like how great video games used to be and all that stuff. You would just put a cartridge in it to work. And he realizes that there's a glass counter, there's a glass counter in front of him, and he starts looking at the glass counter. There's all these old, like, vintage toys and electronics and video games. He's, like, getting super nostalgic. He's excited. He's talking about, oh, my gosh, I wish I had all the stuff I remember when I was a kid. And he sees, like, okay, so this is something I'm taking this because I recently saw this. I was in a vintage toy store here where I live, and they had like a glass counter with like the expensive stuff, of course, but they had like Sega Genesis that I'm still trying to convince myself to buy. They had like a Virtual Boy. They had a couple other like vintage video game stuff I love. And I looked and they had like the original NES from the 80s in box. So, and I was super excited. Of course, I was like, there's no way I can afford this vintage, NES still in a box that comes with 2 controllers, a zapper, and Mario and Duck Hunt. Okay. So our character in this story will see that and be kind of freaking out about it the way I was as an adult. My inspiration for this story. And he's like looking close. He's like, oh my gosh, everything that came with it. I remember the commercial and all that stuff, and all the kids in my class had it. But of course, I asked for Santa and never got it. This is what he's saying to the old man in the vintage shop. And he like stoops down to get a closer look. And he's like kind of just drooling over it. And he's looking and I was like, how much is it? He's like talking out loud. He's trying to find like a price. He was like, this probably costs, $500, $600, $700 because it's mint in box and all that stuff. And it's from all these years ago. He's trying to find a price and he looks and he sees like the old school price tag that's on it. The faded one from like Toys R Us or KB Toys from back in the 80s and all that stuff. And as the original price tag, he's like, oh, that's wild. This is really vintage and old and well kept. And he's still looking at the box in this glass case from, let's assume this NES, the original Nintendo. And he sees like a tag, like a Christmas tag on it and says from Santa. He's like, oh, that's cute. This is someone's old, somebody got this as a kid. And he keep going back. He's like, oh, I wish I had this as a kid. I know I wrote to Santa and asked him for it. And he's still looking at the tag. It's like an old faded tag from the 80s. So it's kind of hard to read. And he like stoops closer to look at it. And he sees under where it says from Santa. And it says to. And he realizes he said it's to his name. Like his full name. And he's like, whoa, that's weird. There's a vintage label looks like from the 80s or 90s. It says to him. And he's confused and he looks a little further down on the label and it says, sorry, this one is so late, from Santa. And he's looking at this and so like this is a glass case. He's like, wait, what's going on? And as he like slowly pulls up to stand eye level to the older man that runs this thrift or vintage shop on the other side of the counter, he realizes that the old man, not a little tiny an old man, it's Santa. Like now he has a beard, he has the full Santa getup. He's like, what is going on? And he was like, yeah. Well, hold on. This is the old man talking. He's talking to our character. He's like, I know I look like Santa, technically, I'm not the Santa. He's doing like the air quotes. Think of me as a vintage mall, antique mall Santa that's appearing to you right now. And he's saying this to our character. And he starts explaining to him that, like, of course, this is a magical shop, but like Santa isn't what you think Santa is and all this stuff. He's explaining it to him. He's like breaking down the reality, and he gives him an option. He's like, these toy, and he's pointing to this cabinet and like the glass case cabinet they're standing on opposite sides of. And as our characters looks more in the cabinet, he realizes that everything in this cabinet is like vintage, but it's still in the old school packaging. It's mint in condition, but it's all the things he wanted as a kid that he didn't get from, his single parent or what he wrote to Santa and all this stuff. And this Santa, that's vintage antique mall Santa, this appearance of it is talking to our character saying, you can have all these things right now. It's like, you've come a long way. You've done great. You give back to charity. You're a good, well-rounded person. You can have all these things now. And he's like, that's great. He's like, how much are they? He's like, no, you can have them all now. This is what Santa's saying to our character. He says, or since this is a magic shop, I can give you these things and you can walk through this door and you can give them to yourself as a child. You can be your own version of Santa as a child. There's like different years. Like, one year was the Nintendo, then there was the Game Boy, or then there was these shoes he wanted. There was like this toy he wanted and all that stuff. And they're all there in front of him in this counter. He's like, you could walk through this door and basically place them in your past and you could have them as a kid. He's like, that's also amazing. He says, there's another option. He's like, you can do that, but then that'll be it. And he explains to them that the reason he's there, our character in this Santa, is he needs help essentially creating a new Santa. Like the thing, the image and the mythology, I guess you want to say, of Santa is like delivering presents to all the kids the same night. Of course it's a myth, but he's trying to explain to them the real thing, that in this shop, this is a magical shop, of course, and it has these magical doors that teleport you in different times and places, but you need somebody good of heart, because it's always, you have to find that person that's good of heart, and that's who our character is, to basically take toys to people at different points of their life. Like if the person needs it as a kid, our Santa will basically, it'll be in this vintage thrift store because he's jumping into different times and giving it to maybe the kid version that needs it then or deserves it then, or maybe that same toy that they didn't get as a kid, they can get later on. Like, they go into a regular thrift store and they have this magical thing where they find it. Not a magical thrift store. They go to a thrift store, maybe later on, they find like a mint version of the toy they wanted as a kid, and it's super cheap and nobody else wants it and they don't want it, and it's like magical to them because they want it or they deserve it or they earned it at this later point in their life. That's what our character is going to do. That's what this antique mall Santa is offering for our character. He's like, you can have these three options. You could take it now, and this will be it. You could take this amazing toy that these toys you wanted your whole life now and be happy. You could walk through this door and give these toys to yourself as a kid and be happy as a kid at these different points in life. Or you can be this version of Santa that can give toys and give these things out to people at different points of their life. And kind of be this ongoing time jumping, time loop used Santa. And he gives it, and he shows our character like the importance of, you can have this now, but that'll be it. That'll be the end of this opportunity to create this Santa, like to basically give gifts to people at different points of their life when they, deserve it the most or need it the most. Like what it would make them the happiest the most. Like, the thing you didn't get as a kid, maybe you didn't deserve it at that point, or you wouldn't appreciate it most at that age, but you get it later on in life, or you get a similar or exact thing later on in life. And that's what our character will be. He'll be this time jumper that does that. And he gives them this option, and he gives them, our character, this option. He shows them, and then he shows, like, he has this little old school vintage CRT TV, with the two knobs and everything. And he shows him this vision of somebody similar to him who didn't get, this Nintendo that our character is given the option of taking to make themselves happy now. And he's like, you can take this to this person. And he shows them this person who's like at a similar point in life. But he's like, if you take it to them, you're going to take it to this point in their life. They're older. Their partner is pregnant. And if you give it to them, that they didn't get this Nintendo with it when they were a kid, just like you, our character. But if you give it to them now, they'll cherish it more because they'll, play with it on Christmas with their child. So they'll have this memory of not just having it as a kid, but they're getting something later on that they didn't get as a kid with their own kid. They'll have this extended special Christmas memory. And he shows it, and it's really touching moment that our character is like, he sees the larger importance of not just, making himself happy, but making other people happy. And that's the ultimate happiness. He can have this material thing that he thought he really wanted as a kid, and maybe it will make him happy as an adult, but he can give so many other people happiness the same way he thought he needed. But then he realizes he can do this for so much people, and that's where his happiness comes from. And he loses all his jadedness and his kind of down feeling for the commercialism of Christmas, that even though these are commercial things, he's like making people happy at these random points in their life during the holidays. So, of course, our character, given this option, he chooses the good one, of course. The Matrix, the red or blue pill. In this one, he has like red, orange, and blue. He takes the good one, and he becomes this new kind of time hopper, vintage used Santa that gives people these gifts that at different points in their life that, they need at that certain point. Sometimes it's gifts, sometimes it's money. Who knows? Maybe I'll write this short story eventually. But did you like that one? My used Santa, or what was I calling it? Used Christmas story. Sorry, my phone's buzzing. But yeah. That's my second holiday story. That's the last one I'll do because it's the end of the holiday season. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve, then it's Christmas, then it's New Year's. I always want to do a New Year's story, but I really don't have a good one. I had one 2 years ago when I did like a winter solstice one about a witch coven or something like that I was trying to work out. But go back and listen to that if you want to. But that's where I end it. That's my short used Christmas story. I hope you're having a good one. Hope you have some eggnog if you like it, or doing something good, listening to holiday music, jingling the bells. But thanks for listening. Have a good end of the year. Maybe the next one will be next year, 2026, if the world hasn't exploded yet. But thanks for listening. I'm still Kirk. This is still Dumb Test Late. This is still the Story Creative Podcast. Thank you for listening, and you will hear from me at some point. Thanks. Bye-bye.